Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice and loud. I think we've got the busiest session, which is a good sign of things to come. This is the first presentation from Sales Connect, so delighted to have everybody here. There's a very old saying, and it's not personal, it's business. And we're here today to tell you that's not the case anymore. Consumer technology has completely flipped that notion on its head. Innovative companies like TiVo remembers the shows you like, the shows you don't like, and they use that data to recommend shows that you watch in the future. Through Uber, they remember who you are, how you want to pay, and they can even predict where you want to go. That's interesting. Through Amazon recommendations, you'll never need to research a new book again. I flew in from Dublin on Sunday, and when I got off the plane, I opened up my phone, and Google now showed me how far away the hotel was. So recommended some hotels nearby or some restaurants nearby where I'd like to eat, and even recommended some shows that me and my family might enjoy while we were over. How they knew my family was traveling, I'm not too sure, but they knew anyway. The point is, we expect this level of meaningful personalization in both our professional lives and our personal lives. And the top companies, the top brands, and importantly, the top salespeople understand this. So, what if we could tap into the same level of personalization or of technology that makes personalization possible in the consumer space, in the B2B space? So I have good news. Today we've got 3 speakers who are going to show us exactly how we do that. So first up, we're joined by Amy Slater from TiVo. Amy's going to talk about how personalization has changed how buyers want to be communicated to. They now expect personalization. Secondly, we have Lawrence Whittle from Persado. Persado are involved in a high-growth market, a huge opportunity, and he's going to talk about how their sales team have used personalization to change their sales outreach and how that's driving revenues for the company. Thirdly, we have Nicole Pesch from AXA, and her team are going to explain how AXA are using personalization to maintain continuity in their client relationships for AXA. So, my name is Kevin Ryan. I head up marketing for LinkedIn Sales Solutions in EMEA. I'm your MC for the day. There's going to be lots of Q&A, lots of opportunity to get involved. I'd ask people to use the hashtag SalesConnect, also our Twitter handle at LinkedIn Selling, and download the app. It's available on Android and on Apple. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage our first speaker, Amy.
Hi, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about being now on the other side of the table. I came to Rovi Corporation about 2 years ago, and now you wonder why TiVo. So 3 days ago, we acquired TiVo, and we decided to take their name because of the brand, and you talk about the importance of brand. So we opted to take the TiVo brand. But I'm only making clarification because when you hear me speak of Rovi, you'll understand that that's where that comes from. When I joined Rovi 2.5 years ago, I had come from a decade or 2 or 2.5 of sales and sales leadership. I knew that the customer relationship was in my hands, and it was my responsibility to build that strong relationship. So I was a little bit hesitant when I leapt over to the other side of the table to run sales operations for Rovi. Sales operations really didn't exist at Rovi, so I had to build a team to support a global sales organization. About a month in, I received a phone call, and I'm hoping that any of you salespeople aren't Doug in the room. But this call went something like this. I got to my office and I saw the blinking light on my phone. I never get calls on my phone, but I better check it. So I have a voicemail. Hi, Amy, it's Doug. Give me a call back. Simple enough. I asked around a few people, is there a Doug here, someone I should call back? I didn't get a response. So I called Doug back. That was my first mistake. And I get this message that says, you've reached mailbox 303. Who does that? Anyhow, I gleefully hung up the phone and said, okay, I checked the box. I called Doug, right? Called him back. Not 5 minutes went by, and I get a call back. Hi, Amy, this is Doug. Thanks so much for calling me back. I was a little creeped out that he knew that I had just called. And I said, great, it's so nice to hear your voice, but who are you? And I said, do you have a last name? He gave me his last name, which thankfully I've forgotten. And then he told me his company name, which I haven't forgotten, but I will protect this company from saying it. And he gave me his company name. And I said, did it ever occur to you to leave your full name and your company name? Because then I would know why to call you back. He said, no, it never occurred to me. Are you kidding me? I was in sales for 25 years, I'm sorry to say, 25 years, and I never did that. And I really never received those kind of calls because I was always the seller, I was not the buyer. And I thought, first of all, I was pretty appalled. And I said, so in other words, you're trying to con me and trick me into calling you back. I said, it doesn't feel so good. So no, I won't do business with you or your company. And then the punchline, he says, how about Tuesday at 9? Shall we get together? Really? Really? So I'm hoping those of us in the room have not used that tactic because it doesn't work. And subsequently, about a week later, I even got a follow-up email, not from Doug, but from one of his peers requesting time with me. And I bet you all know the answer to that. So as you can see here, for those of you as mature as I am, you see the 1990s office. Mine was very similar to that, although I had this really long box where I kept my 3x5 cards. And I started my career selling the most glamorous thing you could imagine, telecommunications. I was selling long distance. It's kind of like selling copiers or wine or something in the day. And I thought, that doesn't sound good, I sell long distance. So I said I was a telecommunications consultant at the age of 24, because I knew so much about telecommunications. And I started my career there at Cable and Wireless, and I was really selling fractions of minutes for pennies. That's what it actually costs money to make a long distance call. So I didn't have the luxury of the internet to find out information about companies, about the people who ran those companies, or about anyone that made those decisions. So what did I have to do? I had to work for it. Not just me, my peers. I would pull out the San Francisco Business Journal, which they have around the country, all kinds of journals, and if you recall those book of lists, the top 100 companies, international companies, because I thought, if I'm going to sell long distance, I want someone to spend a lot of money. And it's typically global companies, because long distance international calling was so expensive. So I would go and I would sit on my floor with my paper and my scissors and my 3x5 cards, watching TV, which wasn't streamed, by the way, like it is today through TiVo or anything like that. I had to just get the show that was on. And so I would sit there on my floor, knees crossed, cutting and pasting. And I would get my stack of 3x5 cards, but they were company names. There were no names of people. How was I going to find out that information? Go to the library. How do I find out that someone's changing jobs? And sometimes there was a section of people coming and going. All right, but what are the chances that people coming or going are buying telecommunications? So I really had to dig and find out more information about these companies and the people that were making those decisions. So I had my tickler file, and what did I do? I had my cards, and I'd put them, they'd all start in the front, and then it would have each month going through the tickler file. I'd make my call, and I'd have to get friendly and develop a relationship with the gatekeeper on the phone, because in those days, I hate saying that, but in those days, there were receptionists that answered the phone. How may I direct your call? Can you tell me the person who handles your telecommunications decisions? I can remember, Amy Van Atta, capital V-A-N, so I'd have to spell my whole name. And so she would send me on to the person. And if I was lucky, I could actually get them live. If not, I would leave a voicemail, giving my first and last name and the name of my company. And so I would jot down on the card the person's name, and they weren't there, or they might answer and say, we're not making a decision today, but why don't you call back in 3 months? great. I mean, that was a win. I got their name, and they told me, call back. I was like, woo! I'm in long distance selling. This is awesome. Not so much. But, so I would take the card, and what did I do with it? I moved it 3 months forward. My CRM. That was my CRM until I eventually got a laptop. It was too big to fit in my lap, but it was a laptop. And I got some contact software, Touchbase, I think was the name. I put in a floppy disk, downloaded into my Mac, I think it was, my Apple computer that I had, like one of the first ones. And there it was, CRM. There was no cloud, only clouds were in the sky. There was none of that. So what else did I have to do in order to get information about the human beings that I was selling to? I had company information, not much of it, but what did I have to do? I would go to networking events, breakfast, lunches, dinners, mixers, matchers, you name it, I did it. And I would meet with people like me selling in the same ecosystem. If any of you have sold long distance or anything like that, you can talk to me later, we can tell war stories, but it was in a really great time. AT&T was breaking up, so you had AT&T and MCI and AllNet and WorldCom, which went there. Anyways, it was a really fascinating time. And so I would work with people who sold Nortel phone systems, people who sold PBXs, people who sold pagers, people that sold copiers. Because what did they know? They knew something I didn't, perhaps. They might know some buyers that I could sell to. So I'd go to these things. That's when business cards really mattered, and I'd hand out all my business cards, and so I had to build relationships not only with my prospects, but with my peers in other businesses. So without the internet, really, not saying that, it's all easy now because of the internet, it's just a different kind of journey than today, what we have at our fingertips. Came up with a really clever way to do massive amounts of cold calling, and that was to pair up with one of my buddies, like, let's get out of the office, let's go do some drive-bys. So one of us would drive, the other one would be in the passenger seat with all of our materials. I had my pitch book. I was almost going to bring it, but it was really old and dusty. But I had my pitch book, it had all my referral letters. People couldn't just go online and see if I got recommendations. I had printed, after every sale, I would ask for a printed letter with asking for a reference. And I would keep that in my pitch book, along with all of the information about the long distance rates and where we had our transatlantic cables and all that really fancy stuff. And so we would do these drive-bys. So I would drive, he'd hop out, and he'd go scour the building. Get contacts, names, what have you. We'd go floor to ceiling. Sometimes we got chased down in these old buildings in San Francisco where you're in the back because you're not allowed to, cold call in the building. No solicitors. That was an invitation. So we'd walk up the back staircase and we'd get chased. And you'd always go to the high floor and then a middle floor and then back up to the high floor. So it, was random. It didn't look like you were just going up and down every floor. And so we would go there and have to develop rapport with the people at the front desk and get names and start the whole process over again. And guess what? No cell phones. Didn't have, today, where is your office? It's in your phone. That took the place of that office that I had in the 90s. The cell phones, back in the day, if anyone remembers, it was like the size of a small car battery. And like a shoe on top of it. My kids are like, well, how old were you when you got a cell phone, says my 10-year-old. I'm like, a lot older than you, darling, right? So, as she's trying to get a cell phone. So all of these things, what element is missing here is technology. So how do you leverage customer relationships when we bring technology in without losing the personal connection? It's about building relationships. It doesn't matter if they're a prospect, a customer, a colleague. It's all about human interaction and human connection. I'm a big fan of self-discovery books and things like that to become better, and there's a famous author named Brené Brown, and she says we're all wired for human connection. So we don't want to lose sight of that human connection, even if it's just business, as Kevin said. It's also personal. And you want to plant the seeds of trust early. And I'll tell you a few more stories about that as we progress. So I thought, how do I describe, in a technological way, talk a little bit about this journey? Not just about my career, but how my journey in sales has really tracked the growth in technology. In the 70s and 80s, what did we have? We had pagers and payphones, pages you, oh, I'm so excited they called me back. Now what? Okay, do you have a dime? I think payphones were a dime at that time. So you actually got to make a call on the road. But then, good news is technology continued to improve. Some more early stage mobile phones that weren't the size of a battery. We had voicemail. Sometimes you could leave like a group voicemail with a number of people. I mean, that was really cool. People were selling voicemail. And then, laptops. So we had a place to put and house the information to do some of that heavy lifting for us. And in the late 90s, wow, did things change. I had the pleasure and opportunity to work at Salesforce.com many years into my career. They started in 1999. CRM, cloud, all these great ways to have information at your fingertips. Thinking, if a salesperson leaves, we've got all that customer data right there at our fingertips. Okay, but what's missing? The connection, the human relationship. You have a salesperson leave? Okay, they don't take their data with them, they probably did, but they also left it behind. But what good does that do you if you haven't built the human connection? So I think sometimes companies also make a little bit of a mistake in thinking when you put a new rep on an account, we've got all the data, what's wrong with you? Why haven't you sold something? It's the human connection. You still have to take the time to develop the relationship, to have the patience, to wait for that person. Maybe they're going to take a new job in 6 months, and maybe they can buy your product. The mid-2000s, phones were getting smarter than most humans and actually really dumbing us down because everything is by memorization. I don't remember anybody's phone. Honestly, I don't always know my own because what do? We just have to push a button. Very limited interaction. You don't really even have to ask anybody for their phone number anymore. That's the beauty of being on the other side of the table now. I see caller ID come in. I'm like, salesperson. I was a salesperson, so I'm sorry. But now I have a sign. How many of us at home, too, right? Telemarketing, even though you're on a do not call list, get all these calls. Sometimes I work from home. My phone rings about 100 times a day. I'm like, I thought that industry was dead. Apparently not. But what's happened with technology is it's removed a lot of the boundaries for human connection, which would be a blessing, and we should take it as a blessing. But I think in many cases we forget, and we think in this sort of fast food generation, let me just skip over the relationship. I've got everything I need to know right here, right now, and I can establish this relationship. I'm here to say it's something different. Now, thankfully, we have LinkedIn, and I'm certainly not just saying it because I'm standing here. I've been a huge advocate of LinkedIn and the value of having a profile and leveraging it to get to know people. I wish that I had it when I was selling, quite frankly, and I certainly would have enjoyed that more than cutting out pieces of paper and putting them on 3x5 cards. But we have so many sources of information, consolidated, disparate information as well. And so there's so many different places we can go to get information, but at the end of the day, it's up to you to add in the human element. Because if you don't, all you have is data. Data is data. Whether you have it or I have it, it's still just data. So you want to be patient. Be patient enough to wait. When someone says, call me back, call them back. Not tomorrow. They didn't say call back tomorrow. They said 3 months. If you call them back in 1 month, they'll say, I told you 3 months. If you call them back again, they'll say, I told you 3 months. They won't take your call next time. So be patient. Be patient for that. Here's another example. If you liked my Doug story, I had another one. Someone says, time is of the essence. I'm like, whose time? Yours or mine? I don't have a whole lot of it. It's not a badge of honor. I just don't. And so be respectful of that. And then I got another one, and I get these all the time, and I know some of my colleagues have as well. I've sent you 14 emails and 7 texts and phone calls, and I wrote you on LinkedIn, and I did this. Okay, you're going to guilt me and make me feel horrible that I didn't get back to you, but I didn't invite you. It's like someone coming into your house unannounced and just opening the door. Hey, what's for dinner? Right? This communication can be handled in a much different way when you remember the human side of it. It's amazing how many people don't even in the emails, ask, I want to learn about your business. I want to learn about what's important to you. How about starting there instead of, give me 10 or 15 minutes because I want to sell you something. 10 or 15 minutes is actually not doing yourself any favors either. 10 or 15 minutes, you barely say hello. I'd rather someone ask me for an hour, because then I know that they actually have something to talk about, than asking me for 10 or 15 minutes. So this really brings me to conversation about TiVo, Rovi, whoever I am today, and tell you a little bit about what we do, because I know a number of you know TiVo as the DVR brand, as a consumer brand, but really it's about what's behind it, being a B2B sales organization. Businesses selling to businesses, selling patents to help with search and discovery of media content and to deliver that anywhere, anytime. It's really that personalization of media. Our customers are very large in scale. So it wasn't like just selling long distance to some mom and pop show. Our businesses are cable operators, they're network providers, you name it, telecom, my history. These are big companies with lots of employees, and finding the right person to sell to, as I say, sell to get to know, it's hard to find the right people to get to know. In the past, we gave tools to help people find information, lists, databases, salesforce.com, data.com, you name it, we're providing lists. But when you have a really niche business like we do, when your total addressable market is pretty narrow, you're looking at not that many cable providers, certainly not that many tier 1, and you go on down, you need a way to really accelerate and scale your sales organization to get to the right people who make those decisions for you. So I had brought Sales Navigator to my prior company, and I thought, what do you think about doing something different? Consolidate that information. We have a global sales team, so what do we do with that? So using social media really helps, as I said before, helps scale, helps us remain social, consolidates the information for us. Instead of looking something up in Salesforce and then going to look up the company on Google and then searching in news and then putting in all kinds of alerts all over the place, then you still have to do all of that heavy lifting. But if we could find a tool that did a lot of that for us and gave us rich connections that also would start with a warm introduction across your own company, I thought, all right, I don't want any salespeople at TiVo to be those people that were calling me. I want to give them the right tools to enable them to bypass all of that heavy lifting and spend the time on planting the seeds of trust with their customers. It's a way, as you can tell by this slide, to bridge that human divide. In the slides when I talked about the transition of technology, as you notice on each slide, the customer kept getting further and further away from the salesperson. You would think with more information, wouldn't that relationship be tighter instead of further away? But what technology has done is it's lulled us into this feeling that because I have more information about this customer, I don't have to then ask all these questions because I already know the answers. So it short circuits some of that opportunity that you have to build a relationship. So what I'd like to suggest is that social selling, and Sales Navigator in particular, helps bridge that human divide. So rather than sending out automated messages, spamming the universe, you can create really custom tailored communications for your prospects. And I'll go through some of those here over the next few slides. But really, it's about gaining insight and understanding of your prospects so that you can actually engage and make them happy to call you back. I had one salesperson we were Rovi at the time, but come to me and say, I noticed that you know Jamie Chen at Comcast, and this was through Navigator. Do you think you could make an introduction for me? I said, as a matter of fact, I'm having lunch with him next week. I'll be happy to mention your name. I never had that 25 years ago. For him to be able to go into Navigator and find out how his customers are connected to the people within his own company. So you start from an early position of trust. It's not just a blind game. So we wanted to find out company insights, right? I've always, in my past life, I would have Google alerts about particular companies. But what about trends? What about trends in business that you might want to follow? Sales Navigator pulls all of that together so you can find out what's relevant, what's important to talk to. Maybe you might send an article to your prospect and say, hey, I saw this conversation that you were a part of, really interesting, thanks for sharing. And don't even ask them for a meeting or an appointment. Just communicate and communicate. When we didn't have the internet, you would mail product information. You might mail a follow-up saying, I read this article and thought about your business, or congratulations on your new position. Make that connection human, which is what Sales Navigator helps you do by getting insights into those companies. It helps you find the right people. Because as I talked about earlier, it's such a vast marketplace out there. It's crazy. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm dissing salespeople, but it's only because I was one. And it's hard. It's a hard job. And so you've got to make every single interaction count. And Sales Navigator helps us do that. So I found Joseph, who's a VP of digital marketing in the Bay Area at Cisco. That's awesome because I used to work there. I could make a connection, and I can start that level of communication. It opens the door. It gets you to the door, and you don't have to barge in. You can just start from a position of a relationship. It's about being prescriptive. We can go in and we don't have to give a job title because there are numerous job titles that make decisions about our business. But you can put a subject like content acquisition. You would not believe how many people you can pull up that have a title or somewhere in their description of content acquisition. So this helps our team become more prescriptive when they're reaching out to their prospects. The other aspect that has been really critical for us is that it helps our brand. It helps our brand when we have the Sales Navigator tool because our people are more aware of building their profile and raising the level of the brand. We treat our licenses like gold. We have something around half of our sales organization has a license, and we track usage. And if they're not using it, guess what? We send a message that says, we've noticed you haven't been using your Sales Navigator license for a while. Is this something you would like to maintain? And they freak out. Oh, yes, I want to keep it. Okay, great. If we don't see a change in your usage over this period of time, we're giving it to somebody else. And so we create that value so people understand that social selling is like gold. And to use this, not to just sit on the shelf, but to be an active user of the platform. We can track people throughout our company of what's their social selling index. My colleague and I were comparing notes. We sort of jockey for position, I must say. Having been in sales for so long, I'm a tad bit competitive. But that's okay, because that's how you win. That's how you create connections with people. That's how you build your brand, your personal brand and your professional brand and your relationships. You never know where those relationships might be. We have a marketing director in Europe by the name of Charles Dawes, and he speaks all around Europe. And whenever he shares something, then we can promote it out to our own network and to the network of our customers, and that helps us build our brand. Now I'd like to take you back to the other side of the table for a moment and talk about leveraging the information that's actually there. If you actually go in and look for someone like me, thank God there's not another one, but if you find me, you could find out some information about me. So when you do that homework, I've had salespeople come in and meet me, and we'll sit down and they'll try to spend about a half an hour asking me to tell them about my company. And I think, well, you've got all that information right there. Maybe you could ask me questions about what you read for clarification. That could be a good start. Ask me what matters. Ask me what matters to me. How long have I been in my job? Maybe I want a big win, and that your product could actually help me look good, because I like that. I want that recognition that I did a good job for my company. So find out what matters, and you will have a friend for life. I got an email the other day from a sales guy who I had known when I was at Cisco. And he went to another company and said, could I come have lunch with you? I want to learn about your new role at Rovi. This was a couple years ago. He came, he told me about his new job, and he was doing things around customer success and all of that. And he said, I don't know, do you think this could be something that we could introduce to your company? I said, yeah, it could be interesting. Let's stay in touch. We stayed in touch. They did a proposal. We couldn't buy what he had to sell, but he did a good job of making that connection. And do you know that a couple weeks ago, he sent me an email, he was leaving that company, and asked me for a recommendation, a reference about the kind of salesperson he is. I never bought anything from him, but we established a relationship. So these relationships that you're establishing, while they might not buy your product, they might find you the ticket to your next job. So those relationships, that human connection matters. Don't let it fool you. It's about being personal, and that's what Kevin talked about in the beginning. I had another really good experience with a salesperson who sent me a book. He had read some things that I had published on LinkedIn, and he sent me a book and said, this reminded me of something that might matter to you. That was really nice. Sent me a book. It wasn't just some random book or a book about his company. It was a book that would be relevant to me. I had another person send me a water bottle and a t-shirt because she read that I liked running. Can we have a conversation? Well, yeah, open the door. We all like to be flattered. And then when I did meet with the first guy who sent me the book, he said, let me know when it's convenient for you. He didn't say, can you meet tomorrow? And I know we go for the close, and I get that. I went through all those trainings. I had a script that I created way back when that said, okay, ask for the appointment, ask for the appointment. I get it. But why not say, when is it convenient for you? It's not a yes or no question. He said, when is it convenient for you? I said, I'm not sure, check back with me. He checked back with me. We met at an event where I happened to be speaking, and we sat down. I couldn't remember what company he worked for or what he was going to sell me, and we had a conversation for 45 minutes before I ever knew where he worked. We just talked about life. We made a human connection. Then I said, tell me about it. Tell me about what you do. What does your company do? And that was a really different experience than having someone just come and dump information on me. So I still haven't bought anything. I did have him come in and provide a demo. It just happened to not work for us at the time. But we stay in touch. And guess what? If someone asks for another colleague might say, hey, do you know of a company that does X, Y, Z? Oh, yeah, you ought to call Bill. Those relationships matter, maybe not at the immediate interaction, but they're valuable down the road. It's about being personal. Personal connections make the difference. When you have all this technology and all this information at your fingertips, just don't forget to sell is still human. Thanks.
Great job. Okay, so we have 15 minutes for questions and answers. First of all, I'd like to start with a A personal question, I suppose, really.
Personal
not
question.
Too,
Because we said it was about being personal, right?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Not too personal, but I asked you beforehand maybe an interesting fact from your history that's not as maybe work-related.
Not as work-related.
So do you want to share that so
Sure,
people can see your personal side?
Okay, so clearly I like to be on stage. So about 5 years ago or so, when I was going through some personal challenges in my life, and I felt like I had just devoted all my life to my children and my marriage, I said, I'm going to do something for me. I've always wanted to be a rock star. So I went online, handy-dandy Google, and I typed in rock and roll camps for adults. Woo, that sounds like exactly. So within 10 minutes, I had signed up for Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp in Dallas, Texas, and I had an opportunity to sing on stage at the House of Blues.
Wow, that deserves a clap, I think.
So this is nothing compared to that.
So we have some roving mics there, so if anyone has a question, please raise your hand. Front row here, could you please?
Great job, and thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
I'm intrigued with your statement of saying ask for 60 minutes instead of asking for shorter time. So if you have any examples that prove that to you personally of why it worked and why you recommended that.
Yeah, because I think if you say 10 or 15 minutes, you start out saying that what I have to tell you, it'll only take this long. Like, it's not important. And it's important to show value in what you bring to the table. And so what you could say is either 45 minutes or 60 minutes of your time. If after 5 minutes of our dialogue, you realize that this isn't what you want or what you need, I'll give you back 50 minutes or 55 minutes. But if we could block an hour, I would be grateful for that time. What do you recommend is a convenient time for you?
Pretty loud, but let's come over here. You talked about creating value for your team just with the sales licenses. I'm just curious, what are some different ways that you did that?
Yeah, so first we limited the number of licenses, that it wasn't just anybody could have one. And we gave trainings, helped them with usage. What can we do? LinkedIn was really great about that, helping us run some trainings. And we pumped up that value. When anybody was a new hire that could receive a license, you're privileged. We used words like that. You're privileged, one of the privileged few who gets to have the Sales Navigator license. Here's where you go. This is how you log in. Here's some success, et cetera, et cetera. And so from the very beginning, before they might even know how it's used, we make it a privilege. And then that privilege, the good thing about a privilege is it could be taken away. And so they think we're a little cutthroat sometimes. And it's not a financial thing. It's that if we're going to invest in you, you need to invest your time into this technology. And so we use language like that to make it easier for people. And in fact, people that pay, for a premium license, they don't then have to pay for it out of their pocket. We help cover the cost instead for them. So we make it a win for them.
This lady over here, yeah.
So can you hear me? Along with that question, how did you define good usage? Was it save leads, save accounts, logging in?
Logging in was a first step. Mm-hmm. Okay. Like logging in was absolutely No, but seriously, you'd
Metric
be surprised.
1.
There were people that had it for a month. Could you activate? But it was also to find out if there were any issues, because we'd have a global sales organization, and sometimes the directions are not as clear, or there might be a different way that they have to go in. But really to see, and how are they using it, and to really look at that.
It can be valuable to tap into the social selling index score as well. And I think you get good marks if you log in.
Absolutely, exactly. That's a good place to start.
Up front here.
Hi, Amy. To follow up to the question before on managing the usage, at this company and your former company, did you find that usage, the people that are doing it well, is it role dependent? In other words, not every seller in every position. So I'd like to hear a little bit about what you found out on the role dependency.
Well, we only give it to certain roles. So we already
Can
narrow.
you expand on that a
Yeah,
little bit?
we give it to our client directors who own the account relationships. We have a few of our technical sellers that have it as well because they're very engaged in establishing those relationships, and our sales leaders who really have, that big network to tap into. And so that's how we narrow it down.
So
Roles matter, absolutely. And I don't think that we could create that value if it was just a peanut butter spread across the organization, because you're going to get some that use it and some that don't. But we also find that the people that use LinkedIn regularly anyways, they're going to be your good Navigator users. Thanks.
Thanks for your question. We have a question in the back here.
Hi.
Hi.
This thing on? Amy Lee from Event Mobi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
A little bit of a different kind of question.
Uh-huh.
As a buyer, what is your favorite way to be contacted?
Good
Yeah, no, I
question.
gave you a lot of examples about how I don't like to be contacted. I don't like to be contacted by phone or email.
Just don't like to be contacted.
I don't like it. Just leave me alone. No, I'm really kidding. Mail. Be different. I'll give you another great example, and I actually wrote about this on LinkedIn about this particular engagement. And I got a message from somebody, Matt, I think was his name, and it said, Giants Wager. I'm from San Francisco. Giants Wager. It says, hi, Matt, I'm from such and such a company, and your Giants are playing my Red Sox tonight. Could I wager with you? If the Red Sox win, you'll give me 15 minutes of your time, and if the Giants win, I'll send you some memorabilia from the game. Like, that's kind of cool. I'm a sports fan. I can dig it. So I replied back. I said, first, what you don't know, because I don't have it on my profile, is that I'm a huge Red Sox fan. But in the interest of this wager, I will root for the Giants, because they are my home team after all. And I said, I said, by the way, I wear an extra small sweatshirt. So it happened to be, this game happened to be around the same time as the Warriors, right? So the Warriors were playing, big deal in the Bay Area, woo-ha, woo-ha. And people were watching that, but what am I doing? I'm keep checking the scores from the Red Sox-Giants game. And so I kept messaging him through LinkedIn, thinking he would be, and I'm like, 0-0, 0-1, Giants are winning, and I just kept at him, right? It was a game. Giants won. He writes back to me, he says, well, I guess you win. And he said, where will you be on Tuesday? Because I'd like to deliver your sweatshirt. And I said, so I'll be in this office.
Nice.
I'll be in this office, and I'm running a meeting that day. So just ask me at the front desk, and I'll sneak out, and I'll come meet you. And I said, in fact, because of your creativity and engagement, I'd like 30 minutes of your time. So he asked for 15. Said I didn't have to give it if his team lost. His team did lose, but he got 30 minutes. And when he didn't live there, so he had someone in the Bay Area deliver the sweatshirt and a box of cupcakes for the meeting. And so people say, and the other thing is, what he was selling me is nothing I could buy, and he knew it. He just wanted to get insights about the tools that I use as a user of some technology tools. He wanted to know that, so he could then be more intelligent when he went to speak to the buyer within Rovi. So that's a way that works. And you don't always have to give me things, that's okay too. But it was that level of creativity. He thought outside of the box. And that may not work for everybody, but it's different. It's not the same ones. I had one, sorry, real quick. I had another one that I got an email from that said, I haven't heard back from you in all these emails I sent. And he said, it's one of three things. He said, either, one, you don't have time for me, you're not interested, or you're a robot. And I wrote back and I said, yes to all three, please unsubscribe. And so those kinds of things, like, don't guilt me, don't pressure me. I didn't ask you over. I don't want to have to kick you out of my house. So finding creative ways is the best way to get to
You hit on this term patience as well. There's such pressure to push.
Yep.
Finding that mix is so important as well. So
yeah, like that sales guy who left a company and said, could you be a reference for me? I didn't buy the thing, but I was in the buying process with him, and he was a good relationship developer.
Great. We have a question here in the front row.
Yeah, hi Amy.
Hi.
Ray Bonus with CommScope.
Hi.
First of all, Doug called me 17 times after he called me. So we've got a commonality.
Wait for your call from Mac.
Yeah,
Yeah, right,
yes,
exactly.
yeah, and I want the cupcakes too. But, I'm just curious, total Salesforce globally and total number of users on LinkedIn Sales Navigator.
Yeah, so we now have about 120 or so global salespeople and just shy of about 55 users.
We have a question at the back on the right.
I don't know if, okay, yes. Good afternoon, Danielle Durkink, Intercontinental Hotels Group. Wanted to get your perspective as a buyer. Are you doing the reverse and looking at your sellers' profiles when they contact you?
I do. So when I do see them, I absolutely go to their profile. First I say, do I know you? How did you get to me? And that's the other thing, when you make a connection and ask to connect, just clicking connect, like, why are you wanting to connect with me? Do you live near me? Do we have mutual friends? Did we work in the same place together? Let me know why. Tell me why it is, because I will go to your profile. And if I don't really, if it's a dead giveaway, and it says sales rep, account executive for such and such a company, sometimes I'll go to the company itself to see if it's a product that I might be interested in. But I do look at the seller's profile, absolutely. Absolutely.
Have we any more questions? Time for one more. On the left-hand side.
Hi, Amy. John Crowley from Riva CRM Integration.
Hi, John.
Do you have any advice on using social selling to engage with the C-suite versus middle management? You approach it the same, or any tips?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's even more critical to establish a relationship at that level. Because do you think that how many emails do you think they get a day, right? I think when you're getting into the C-suite, it's really about finding all the avenues in and leveraging those. An introduction in, who knows who, some type of common thread. I would not go about it in the usual way. Absolutely.
Great. Just one more.
Okay, fast forward a month. What Red Sox are in a one-game wild card playoff. Are you starting David Price or Rick Porcello?
Price.
Okay, great.
Great question to end on. Okay,
Thank you.
one final round of applause from Amy for such fantastic insights.